Montana Territory, 1877. The cry pierced the prairie silence like a knife through canvas. Warren Gallagher reined in his sorrel mare, his hand instinctively moving to the Colt revolver holstered at his hip. 25 years old and hardened by 3 years of drifting through the territories, he had learned one fundamental truth. Attachment was a luxury that got a man killed on the frontier. He traveled alone, worked alone, and kept his heart locked tighter than a strongbox. The cry came again, thin and desperate. Warren scanned the landscape, his jaw tightening beneath 2 days of stubble. The Montana plains stretched endlessly in all directions, golden grass rippling under the late afternoon sun. He should ride on. Whatever trouble lay ahead was not his concern. He had learned that lesson the hard way after watching his entire outfit get massacred 5 years back when they stopped to help what they thought was a stranded family. It had been an ambush. He had survived only because he had been scouting ahead. Trust gets you killed out west, love makes you weak, stay alone, stay alive. But the cry persisted, and Warren recognized it now for what it was, an infant. He urged his mare forward cautiously, rifle drawn, scanning for the trap he was certain awaited. As he crested a small rise, he saw it. A wicker basket sitting in the middle of the rutted trail, a scrap of calico fabric fluttering in the breeze like a flag of surrender. Warren circled the area twice, checking for hidden threats before finally dismounting. The baby inside the basket could not have been more than 6 months old, its face red and scrunched with distress. A girl wrapped in a worn but clean blanket, her tiny fists waving at the sky. "Where is your mama, little one?" Warren muttered, glancing around. Fresh wheel tracks led off the main trail into a copse of cottonwoods about 100 yards distant. The tracks were deep, suggesting a heavy wagon moving fast, too fast. The baby's cries intensified, and something twisted uncomfortably in Warren's chest. He knelt beside the basket, his large, calloused hands hovering uncertainly. He knew nothing about babies. He knew about cattle drives and camp cooking and which plants would kill you if you made tea from them, but infants were as foreign to him as the moon. "SHH now," he tried awkwardly. "I am going to find your people." Following the tracks proved easy enough. Within minutes, Warren spotted the wagon tilted at a dangerous angle, its right rear wheel shattered against a boulder half buried in the earth. The oxen stood patiently in their traces, and beside the wagon knelt a young woman frantically trying to jack up the axle with a piece of driftwood that was clearly inadequate for the task. Warren's breath caught. She could not have been more than 22 years old, with honey blonde hair escaping from a practical bun and tumbling around her face. Her dress was simple calico in deep blue, dusty from travel but well mended. Even streaked with dirt and tears, she possessed a beauty that struck him like a physical blow, all determination and desperate grace. She looked up at his approach, and Warren saw the exact moment fear flooded her green eyes. She grabbed a rifle from the wagon bed and aimed it at his chest with shaking hands. "Stay back," she warned, her voice hoarse but steady. "I am armed and I will protect what is mine." Warren raised his hands slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and calm. "Ma'am, I am not here to harm you. I found your baby up on the main trail. She seems well enough, just frightened." The woman's face crumpled for just a moment before she forced her composure back. "Lucy." "Her name is Lucy." The rifle barrel dipped slightly. "She fell from the wagon when the wheel broke. I had to choose between chasing the basket or losing my supplies, and I thought I could fix this quickly and get back to her before." Her voice broke. "She is safe," Warren said firmly. He slowly lowered his hands. "My name is Warren Gallagher. I have your daughter back on the trail. Let me help you with this wagon." The woman studied him with an intensity that made him oddly self-conscious. He was aware of his dusty trail clothes, the worn leather vest over his blue cotton shirt, the battered Stetson that had seen better days. He was just a drifter, another cowboy chasing work from ranch to ranch, running from ghosts and memories. Finally, she lowered the rifle. "Sarah Peterson," she wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I apologize for the greeting, but a woman alone out here cannot be too careful." "No apology needed." That was smart thinking. Warren dismounted and approached the wagon, assessing the damage. The wheel was destroyed beyond repair, but he had rope and tools. "I can rig something to get you to the nearest town." "That would be Sweetwater, about 12 miles northwest." "I was heading to Sweetwater," Sarah said quietly. "To my brother's homestead. He sent for me after my husband." She stopped, swallowing hard. "After I became a widow." Warren felt that uncomfortable twist in his chest again. He focused on the practical problem before him. "I will fetch your daughter first. She should not be alone out there any longer than necessary." Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. Thank you, truly. As Warren rode back to retrieve little Lucy, he tried to ignore the way his heart had stuttered when Sarah Peterson looked at him with those grateful green eyes. He had no business noticing a woman's eyes or the graceful line of her neck or the fierce courage in her voice when she had aimed that rifle at him. She was a widow with a child, heading to family, and he was a drifter with nothing to offer anyone. This would be a simple act of frontier hospitality, nothing more. He would help her reach Sweetwater, then continue on to the ranch work he had lined up near Helena. No attachment. No complications. The baby had worked herself into a full fury by the time he returned, her face purple with rage and fear. Warren lifted the basket carefully, speaking to his mare in soothing tones to keep her calm despite the noise, and made his way back to the broken wagon. The moment Sarah saw her daughter, she ran forward, lifting Lucy from the basket and clutching her clothes. The baby's cries quieted almost immediately, replaced by hiccuping sobs. Sarah buried her face in her daughter's soft hair, murmuring words of comfort and love. Warren busied himself with the wagon, giving them privacy for their reunion. He unhitched the oxen and let them graze while he assessed the supplies Sarah carried. Practical goods: flour, salt, pork, a crate of canning jars, bedding, a few books, everything a woman would need to start over. How long were you married? Warren asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. But something about Sarah Peterson made him curious in a way he had not been about another human being in years. Sarah settled Lucy in the basket, giving the baby a spoon to play with. 3 years. Thomas was a good man. He died of pneumonia last winter. Her voice was matter of fact, but Warren heard the grief underneath. My brother Michael wrote and said there was space for us on his homestead. He has a wife and 2 children of his own, but he said family should stick together. That is good of him. Warren worked rope through the wagon's axle housing, creating a makeshift sled. It would be slow going, but they would make it. Are you married, Mr. Gallagher? The question caught him off guard. No, ma'am, never saw the point of it for a man like me. A man like you? Warren straightened, meeting her eyes. A drifter, I go where the work is. No place to settle, no interest in putting down roots. Even as he said it, the words felt hollow, like a speech he had repeated so many times he no longer examined if it was true. Sarah studied him with that penetrating gaze again. That sounds lonely. Lonely is safe, Warren said before he could stop himself. He turned back to the wagon, jaw tight. We should move out. We have maybe 4 hours of daylight left, and I would rather not be on the trail after dark. They made slow progress, Warren leading his mare while Sarah drove the ox team with the makeshift sled dragging behind. Lucy alternated between sleeping and fussing, and every time the baby cried, Warren noticed Sarah's shoulders tense with maternal worry. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, Warren spotted a creek sheltered by rock formations. We should camp here for the night. We will not make Sweetwater before dark, and this spot offers protection. Sarah nodded, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. Warren helped her down from the wagon seat, his hands steadying her by the waist for just a moment. Even through the layers of her dress, he felt her warmth, and something electric passed between them. She stepped back quickly, color rising in her cheeks. Thank you. Warren focused on making camp, trying to ignore the domestic familiarity of it all. He hobbled the animals and built a fire while Sarah tended to Lucy, changing the baby's diaper with practiced efficiency and nursing her beneath a shawl. Warren busied himself with preparing coffee and hard biscuits, studiously not looking at the tender scene they created in the firelight. Where are you from originally? Sarah asked as they ate their simple meal. Lucy dozed in her arms, milk-drunk in content. Pennsylvania, my family had a farm there. Warren stared into the flames. That was a long time ago. What brought you west? Same thing that brings most men. A chance to start over. He did not elaborate, did not mention the letter from his brother that had arrived too late, the trip west to join a cattle drive that had ended in blood and death. He did not mention how he had drifted from job to job for 5 years since, never staying anywhere long enough to form attachments, certain that caring about people only brought pain. Sarah seemed to sense his reluctance to discuss it. I was born in Ohio. Thomas and I came to Montana 3 years ago, full of dreams about homesteading. We had a small place near Billings. She smiled sadly. It was harder than we imagined. Thomas worked himself to exhaustion trying to make the land produce. When he got sick, there was no money for a doctor. She stroked Lucy's head gently. I sold the homestead to pay debts and kept just enough for passage to Michael's place. That took courage, Warren said quietly. Starting over is never easy. Neither is staying alone. Sarah's eyes met his across the fire, and Warren felt something in his chest crack open just a little. He stood abruptly. I will check the animals. In the darkness beyond the firelight, Warren forced himself to breathe. This was exactly what he had spent 5 years avoiding. The pull of connection, the dangerous warmth of caring about someone else's welfare. Sarah Peterson and her daughter would be in Sweetwater tomorrow, and he would ride on to Helena, and that would be the end of it. It had to be. When he returned to the fire, Sarah had laid out her bedroll near the wagon with Lucy's basket close beside her. She had left his coffee waiting, still warm. You should sleep, Warren said. I will take first watch. Watch for what? This is open country, ma'am. Could be wolves, could be outlaws, could be hostile natives, though most tribes around here are peaceful these days. He settled against a rock, rifle across his knees. Better safe than sorry. Sarah studied him for a long moment. You are not at all what I expected when I saw a strange cowboy riding toward my broken wagon. What did you expect? Someone who would rob me or worse. Not someone who would help, she paused. Not someone who would watch over us through the night. Any decent man would do the same. We both know that is not true. Sarah's voice was soft but firm. Decency is rarer than gold out here, Mr. Gallagher. I recognize it when I see it. Warren did not know how to respond to that, so he said nothing. Eventually, Sarah settled into her bedroll, though he noticed she kept her rifle close. The night passed slowly. Warren watched the stars wheel overhead and listened to the crackling fire and the gentle breathing of the woman and child under his protection. It felt right in a way that terrified him. When the moon was high, Lucy began to cry. Sarah woke instantly, lifting the baby and walking with her, murmuring softly. The baby would not settle, her cries growing more distressed. I think she is ill, Sarah said, worry sharpening her voice. She felt Lucy's forehead. She is burning up. Warren was on his feet immediately. Could be from the sun today. Does she have a fever often? Never, she has always been healthy. Sarah's voice trembled. I do not know what to do. Warren remembered his mother treating fevers when he was young. Cool water, we need to bring her temperature down. He grabbed his canteen and a clean bandana, soaking the cloth and handing it to Sarah. Sponge her down, keep her cool. For the next 2 hours they worked together, Warren fetching fresh water from the creek while Sarah bathed her daughter and tried to get her to take small sips. The baby's cries weakened, which was somehow worse than when she had been wailing. She is going to die, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. I cannot lose her too. I cannot bear it. She is not going to die. Warren knelt beside Sarah, his hand covering hers. Lucy is a fighter, I can see it in her. She comes by that honestly, I think. Sarah looked at him with such desperate hope that Warren felt his carefully constructed walls crumble a little more. Without thinking, he reached out and wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. We will get her through this, he promised. I swear it. As dawn broke, Lucy's fever began to break as well. Her skin cooled, her breathing eased, and she finally fell into a deep, healing sleep. Sarah sagged with relief, and Warren caught her before she collapsed completely. Easy now, he murmured, helping her to her bedroll. You need rest too. I cannot sleep, we need to reach Sweetwater. We will, but not until you have had a few hours of sleep. I will watch over Lucy. When Sarah started to protest, Warren added gently, trust me. Sarah's eyes searched his face, and whatever she saw there must have reassured her because she nodded and lay down. Within minutes she was asleep. Warren sat with the baby's basket beside him, one finger extended for Lucy to grip in her sleep. The tiny hand wrapped around his calloused finger, and he felt something fundamental shift inside him. This child, this woman, they had breached his defenses without even trying. The loneliness that had been his armor for 5 years suddenly felt less like protection and more like a prison. But what did he have to offer them? He was a cowboy with a bedroll and a horse, running from a past he could not change. Sarah deserved better. Lucy deserved better. When Sarah woke several hours later, the sun was high and Lucy was cooing happily. All signs of illness vanished. She seems completely recovered, Sarah said, wonder in her voice. She looked at Warren with something close to awe. You saved her life. We saved her life, Warren corrected. You are her mother, you knew what to do. I was panicking. You kept me steady. Sarah lifted Lucy from the basket, holding her close. I will never be able to thank you properly, Mr. Gallagher. Warren, he said, you can call me Warren. Warren, she repeated, and something about the way she said his name made his heart stutter. I am Sarah then. No more formalities between friends. Friends, the word should have comforted him, but instead it felt inadequate for the connection growing between them. They broke camp and continued toward Sweetwater. The town appeared on the horizon around midday, a collection of wooden buildings clustered along a creek, backed by the distant mountains. Warren felt an unexpected reluctance as they approached, knowing their time together was ending. My brother's homestead is north of town, Sarah said as they entered the main street. About 5 miles out, the letter said to ask at the general store for directions to the Peterson place. Warren helped her navigate the wagon to the store, aware of curious glances from townspeople. A strange cowboy escorting a young widow would naturally draw attention. Inside the store, a weathered man behind the counter looked up from his ledger. Help you folks. I am looking for Michael Peterson's homestead, Sarah said. I am his sister, just arrived from Billings. The storekeeper's expression shifted to something Warren could not quite read. Sympathy, concern. You did not get the letter, then. Sarah's face went pale. What letter? I am sorry to be the one to tell you, ma'am. Michael Peterson died about 6 weeks back, accident with a horse. His widow Clara, she packed up the children and went back east to her family. The storekeeper shook his head. Terrible business, the homestead is abandoned now. Sarah swayed and Warren caught her elbow, steadying her. Lucy, sensing her mother's distress, began to whimper. There must be some mistake, Sarah whispered. Michael wrote to me. He said to come. The letter must have been sent before the accident, Warren said gently. He looked at the storekeeper. Is the homestead still standing? Far as I know, Clara left most everything there, took only what she could carry. But the place is empty, no livestock, no supplies laid in. Warren guided Sarah back outside, his mind racing. She had sold everything to come here, had no other family, no resources. The frontier could be brutally unforgiving to women alone, especially those with children. What am I going to do? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucy was crying openly now, feeding off her mother's anguish. Warren made a decision that went against every rule he had lived by for 5 years. We will go to the homestead, see what is there, then we will figure out the next step. Sarah looked at him with wide eyes. I am not leaving you alone in a strange town with no resources. Warren met her gaze steadily. I said I would get you to safety, and I meant it. But your work in Helena can wait. The truth was, Warren realized he had no urgent job waiting. He had been drifting toward Helena simply because it was a destination, something to keep him moving. But standing here with Sarah and Lucy, he felt the first stirrings of something he had not experienced in years: purpose. The Peterson homestead sat in a small valley with a creek running through it, exactly as Michael's letter had described to Sarah. The cabin was solidly built, one room with a loft, a stone fireplace at one end. There was a small barn, a chicken coop, and the remnants of a kitchen garden. Warren helped Sarah down from the wagon and watched as she walked through the empty cabin, Lucy on her hip. The previous occupants had left furniture and basic supplies, but the place had the hollow feeling of abandonment. Michael built this with his own hands, Sarah said softly, running her hand along a log wall. He wrote to me about every nail he drove, every window he installed. He was so proud. Warren stood in the doorway, giving her space to grieve. Through the open door, he watched clouds build over the mountains. Storm coming. We should bring your supplies inside. They worked together as the sky darkened, carrying Sarah's possessions into the cabin and making it habitable. Warren checked the cabin's construction and found it sound. The roof was good, the chinking solid. With work, this could be a real home. As rain began to fall, Warren built a fire in the fireplace while Sarah nursed Lucy in the rocking chair that had been Clara's. The domestic scene struck him deeply. This was what he had denied himself for years, this sense of home and belonging. I could file a claim on this land, Sarah said suddenly. The Homestead Act allows for widows to claim. If I can prove improvement and live here for 5 years, it would be mine. Warren turned from the fire. You would stay. Alone? What choice do I have? Sarah's voice was steady, but he saw fear in her eyes. I have no money to go anywhere else. At least here I have shelter. She looked around the cabin. I can plant a garden, maybe raise chickens if I can afford to buy some. Other women have made it work alone. It is hard country for a woman and child without protection. Warren hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning in his mind. What about remarrying? There are men in town who would likely. Marry for practicality, Sarah's laugh was bitter. Take a stranger as a husband because I need a provider, she shook her head. I did love Thomas, Mr. Gallagher. I will not dishonor that by marrying without at least the hope of affection. Warren sat down at the rough table, turning his coffee cup in his hands. I could stay, help you get established. Just until you are on your feet. Sarah looked at him sharply. Why would you do that? You have work waiting in Helena. You said yourself you are a drifter, that you have no interest in settling down. Maybe I was wrong about that. The words came out before Warren could stop them, and he realized they were true. I have been running for 5 years, Sarah. Running from grief and guilt and the fear of caring about anyone. But these past 2 days with you and Lucy, I have felt more alive than I have in all that time. Warren, Sarah's voice was soft, uncertain. I am not asking for anything, Warren continued quickly. I am not proposing marriage or expecting you to feel anything for me. I am just saying I could stay, work the land, help you build something here. You would be in charge. It would be your homestead, I would just be hired help. I have no money to pay you. I do not need money, Warren struggled to find the words. I need to be something more than a man running from his past. I need to build instead of just surviving. The rain drummed on the roof as Sarah studied him. Lucy had fallen asleep at her breast, milk-drunk and peaceful. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the valley. I would need to be able to trust you, Sarah said finally. Completely, living here together, even if it is just as employer and hired hand, people will talk. My reputation would be in your hands. You can trust me, Warren said. I swear it on my life. Why do I believe you? Sarah smiled slightly. I have known you less than 2 days, and yet I feel safer with you than I did with people I knew for years back in Billings. Sometimes the frontier strips away pretense, Warren said. You see what people are made of real quick when survival is on the line. Sarah stood, cradling Lucy as she walked to the window. My husband was a good man, Warren, but he did not know how to make the land work. He was a clerk before we came west, and he never quite figured out farming or ranching. We were always struggling. I grew up on a farm, Warren said, and I have spent 5 years working cattle and learning the land. I cannot promise wealth, but I can promise I know how to make a homestead work. Sarah turned to face him. If you stay, we do this properly, we will draw up an agreement. You work the land and help improve it for 2 years. In exchange, I will provide room and board. After 2 years, if you still wish to stay, we will renegotiate terms. If you wish to leave, you can go with my blessing and a fair wage for your work. Warren stood and extended his hand, agreed. Sarah shook his hand, her grip firm despite her small size. Partners then. Partners, Warren agreed, though even as he said it, he knew his feelings were already more complicated than that. The next weeks fell into a rhythm that felt both foreign and utterly natural to Warren. He rose before dawn to tend the animals he had purchased with the last of his savings, 3 chickens, a cow in milk, and a horse to help work the land. He repaired the barn, cleared the overgrown garden, and began turning soil for spring planting. Sarah proved to be hardworking and practical, never shirking the difficult tasks. She cooked over the fireplace, washed clothes in the creek, and tended Lucy while also maintaining the cabin and helping Warren with outdoor work whenever possible. She would carry Lucy in a sling tied across her body, working with the baby against her chest, singing softly. They fell into an easy partnership, though Warren found himself increasingly aware of Sarah in ways that went far beyond practical. The way morning light caught in her blonde hair when she hung laundry, the sound of her laughter when Lucy did something amusing, the fierce determination in her eyes when she was learning a new skill. He was falling in love with her, and it terrified him. One evening, about a month after they had arrived at the homestead, Sarah called Warren to the cabin. There is something I need to show you. She led him to the loft where they stored supplies and moved aside a trunk. Underneath was a loose floorboard. When she pried it up, Warren saw a small leather pouch. I found this when I was cleaning, Sarah said. It was Michael's, I think. Warren opened the pouch and found a modest amount of gold coins, not a fortune but substantial. This changes things, you have resources now. We have resources, Sarah corrected. She met his eyes. This belongs to the homestead. To our partnership. Sarah, that is your brother's money, rightfully yours and Lucy's. And I choose to invest it in making this place work. She touched his arm lightly. Unless you are planning to leave. Warren covered her hand with his. I am not going anywhere. The touch lingered a moment too long, both of them aware of the shift in the air between them. Sarah pulled her hand back first, color rising in her cheeks. Good, she said softly, then we can use this money wisely. Buy seed, perhaps another cow, supplies for the winter. That night Warren lay in his bedroll in the barn and stared at the rafters, unable to sleep. He was breaking his own rules, getting attached, starting to care. But more than that, he was starting to hope, starting to imagine a future that included more than just survival. He was imagining a future with Sarah. The problem was that Sarah saw him as a business partner, nothing more. She had made it clear she would not marry for practicality. And what did he have to offer beyond his labor? He was still just a drifting cowboy with a past he had never told her about. Spring turned to summer and the homestead began to flourish under their combined efforts. The garden produced vegetables, the chickens provided eggs, and the cow gave milk that Sarah turned into butter and cheese they could trade in town. Warren built a better fence and started planning for livestock to purchase in the fall. Lucy grew from infant to a chubby, happy baby who crawled everywhere and had begun to pull herself up on furniture. Warren found himself enchanted by her, playing with her in the evenings, making her laugh with silly faces. She loves you, Sarah said one night, watching Warren bounce Lucy on his knee. She laughs more with you than anyone. She is easy to love, Warren said, then immediately regretted it when he saw Sarah's expression shift to something complicated and unreadable. In town, people had begun to accept their unusual arrangement. Warren was always respectful in how he spoke about Sarah, making it clear he was hired help and nothing more. Sarah maintained appropriate boundaries, though Warren noticed she defended him fiercely if anyone questioned his character. That is not your concern, she had told the minister's wife when the woman hinted that their living situation was improper. Mr. Gallagher is a man of impeccable honor, and I will not hear otherwise. Warren had been in the general store and overheard the exchange. Something warm had bloomed in his chest at Sarah's defense of him. Late summer brought a test of their partnership. A man named Victor Crane rode up to the homestead, claiming Michael Peterson had owed him money and that he had first rights to the land as collateral. This is my homestead, Sarah said firmly, standing on the porch with Lucy in her arms. Warren stood slightly behind her, hand resting casually on his gun belt. I filed a legal claim and I have the papers to prove it. Crane was a large man with cold eyes and an air of casual violence. Your brother borrowed $500 from me last winter, said if he could not pay, I could have the land. Show me the paperwork, Sarah demanded, did not put it in writing. Michael's word was good enough for me. Crane's eyes traveled over Sarah in a way that made Warren's blood boil. Of course, we could work out another arrangement. A woman alone out here needs a man's protection. Warren stepped forward, placing himself between Crane and Sarah. The lady has all the protection she needs, and we do not believe your story. If Michael Peterson owed you money, you would have papers to prove it. Crane's hand moved toward his gun and Warren's hand tightened on his own weapon. For a long moment the two men stared at each other, violence hanging in the air. Finally, Crane backed down. This is not over. I know a crooked judge in the territorial office who owes me favors. You have not heard the last of this. He rode away, leaving dust and threat in his wake. Sarah was shaking when Warren turned to her. He is lying about the debt, isn't he? Yes, Warren said. Men like Crane see a woman alone and think they can bully or manipulate her into giving up valuable land. But we will fight this properly. We will go to the land office and make sure all your papers are in order. If he tries legal tricks, we will get a lawyer. We cannot afford a lawyer. We will find a way. Warren gently took Lucy from Sarah's arms and carried the baby inside. Come on, let us have some coffee and figure this out. As they sat at the table, Warren watched Sarah force herself to calm down, to think strategically. She was remarkable, he realized, stronger than most men he had known. Warren, Sarah said suddenly, I need to know something. If Crane comes back with men and tries to take this land by force, will you stay? Will you fight? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. If Warren said yes, he was committing to more than just working the land. He was committing to defending it, to defending Sarah and Lucy with his life if necessary. I will stay, Warren said. I will fight. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Why? This is not your land, not your fight. You could walk away right now and no one would fault you. Warren reached across the table and took her hand. Sarah, I think you know why. She stared at their joined hands, and when she looked up, her expression was torn between hope and fear. Do not say it, please. If you say it, everything changes, and I do not know if I am ready for that. Warren released her hand, though it took all his willpower. All right, but know this, I am not going anywhere. Whatever comes, we face it together. Over the following weeks, they made multiple trips to the land office in the county seat, ensuring all Sarah's homestead paperwork was properly filed and recorded. A lawyer in town, a young man named James who had just opened his practice, took on their case for a modest fee, intrigued by the attempt to defraud a widow. Crane is known as a land grabber, James told them. He has tried this before with other settlers. If we can prove a pattern of fraud, we can get him barred from making any more claims. The legal battle dragged on through late summer into fall. Warren and Sarah worked the homestead, gathered the harvest, and prepared for winter. Through it all, their partnership deepened into something neither of them could deny, but both were afraid to name. One evening in October, Warren was teaching Sarah to shoot. She had insisted on learning, wanting to be able to defend herself and Lucy if necessary. Keep both eyes open, Warren instructed, standing behind her, his arms bracketing hers as he helped her aim the rifle. Focus on the target, not the sight. Sarah fired and the bottle exploded off the fence post. She turned in his arms, excited, and suddenly they were face to face, mere inches apart. Time seemed to stop. Warren could see flecks of gold in her green eyes, could count the freckles across her nose. Sarah's lips parted slightly, and he knew she felt it too, this magnetic pull between them. Warren, she whispered. He stepped back, releasing her. Good shot, try again. The moment was broken, but something had shifted irreversibly. That night, Lucy woke crying with teething pain, and Warren heard Sarah walking with her, singing softly. Unable to sleep anyway, he left the barn and approached the cabin. Through the window, he could see Sarah silhouetted against the firelight, swaying with her daughter. Warren knocked softly before entering. Can I help? Sarah looked exhausted. She has been crying for hours. Nothing I do soothes her. Warren took Lucy gently. Let me try, you rest. He walked with the baby, rubbing her back, humming an old song his mother had sung to him. Gradually, Lucy's cries quieted to whimpers and then stopped altogether. Warren continued walking, afraid to stop and wake her. When he turned, he found Sarah watching him with an expression that made his heart ache. You would have been a good father, she said softly. I still could be, Warren said before he could stop himself. Sarah's eyes widened. Warren. I am sorry, I said I would not push, and I meant it. He gently laid the sleeping Lucy in her cradle. I should go. Wait, Sarah caught his arm as he moved past. I need to tell you something about Thomas. Warren stopped, waiting. I did love him, Sarah said, but it was not a passionate love, it was comfortable, practical. We were friends who decided to build a life together. She took a shaky breath. I mourned when he died, truly I did, but part of me mourned that we never had the kind of love that sets your soul on fire. The kind of love worth risking everything for. Warren's heart was pounding. Sarah. I am telling you this because I need you to understand that if I allow myself to love again, I want it to be the real thing. I want passion and risk and someone who makes me feel alive. Her eyes met his. Someone like you. Warren closed the distance between them in 2 strides. Say that again. Someone like you, Sarah whispered. Someone exactly like you. He cupped her face in his hands, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she did not, when she instead leaned into his touch, Warren kissed her. It was soft and tentative at first, both of them learning the shape and taste of each other. Then Sarah's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened into something desperate and claiming. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Warren rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said. I have loved you since that first night when you defended your daughter with fierce courage. I have loved you through every sunrise we have shared, every meal, every moment of building this life together. I love you too, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. I have been so afraid to admit it, so afraid of being hurt again, of choosing wrong. But Warren, you are not wrong. You are the rightest thing that has ever happened to me. They stood in the firelight, holding each other, until Lucy stirred in her cradle. Sarah laughed wetly, wiping her eyes. We have excellent timing. I should still go to the barn, Warren said reluctantly, for propriety. For propriety, Sarah agreed. But before he left, she kissed him again, soft and sweet and full of promise. Warren floated back to the barn, his heart feeling lighter than it had in years. He loved Sarah Peterson, and she loved him back. It seemed impossible, like something from a dream. But the dream nearly became a nightmare a week later when Victor Crane returned, this time with 4 armed men. Warren was working on the barn roof when he spotted the riders approaching. He quickly climbed down and called to Sarah, who was in the garden with Lucy. "Get in the house, take the rifle, do not come out no matter what you hear." Sarah's face went pale, but she nodded and ran for the cabin with Lucy. Warren faced the 5 men alone, his hand resting on his gun. Crane rode up with a smug expression. "Gallagher, is it? You are trespassing on my land. This is Sarah Peterson's legal homestead, and you know it. The judge ruled in my favor yesterday. I have the papers right here." Crane pulled a document from his coat. "You have 1 hour to clear out." Warren did not need to read the papers to know they were falsified. Crane had made good on his threat about having connections with a crooked judge. "We will appeal," Warren said steadily. "You are not taking this land." "I am taking it today. You can leave peacefully or in a pine box, your choice." The 4 men with Crane spread out, hands on their weapons. Warren's mind raced. He was outnumbered 5-1. Even if he was fast enough to take down 2 or 3, the others would kill him, and then Sarah would be defenseless. Behind him, he heard the cabin door open. "No," he said without turning. "Sarah, stay inside." But Sarah walked out onto the porch, rifle in hand. Lucy was safely inside, he hoped. "This is my land," Sarah said clearly. "I will not surrender it to thieves and liars." "Little lady, you are making a big mistake," Crane said. "The only mistake would be backing down to you." Sarah raised her rifle, aiming at Crane. "Leave now." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then one of Crane's men started to draw his gun, and everything happened at once. Warren drew and fired in one smooth motion, hitting the man's hand and sending his gun flying. Sarah fired over the heads of the other men, the crack of the rifle echoing across the valley. From behind them came another gunshot, and Warren turned to see 3 men on horseback riding hard toward the homestead, one of them still holding a smoking gun. "That is enough," the lead rider called out as they approached. He was older, with a sheriff's badge pinned to his vest. "Crane, you and your men are under arrest." Crane's face went red. "On what charges?" "Fraud, attempted extortion, and about 6 other crimes I have been building a case on for the past 3 months. The sheriff gestured to his deputies. "Boys, disarm these men." As the deputies collected weapons, the sheriff dismounted and approached Sarah and Warren. "Ma'am, sir, I apologize it took so long to get here. Your lawyer, young James, he came to me weeks ago with evidence of Crane's schemes. We have been investigating every claim he made, every falsified document. The judge he bribed is already in custody." Sarah lowered her rifle, her whole body shaking with relief. "It is over." "It is over," the sheriff confirmed. "Your homestead claim is legitimate and will stand. Crane will be lucky if he does not hang." After the sheriff and his prisoners had left, Sarah collapsed into Warren's arms. He held her tightly, feeling his own hands shake with the aftermath of adrenaline. "I thought I was going to lose you," Sarah whispered. "When I saw those men draw their guns, I thought." "I know," Warren buried his face in her hair. "I was prepared to die defending this place, defending you. And then I realized dying would mean leaving you alone, and I could not bear that." Sarah pulled back to look at him. "Warren Gallagher, I have a question for you." "Ask me anything." "Will you marry me?" Warren blinked, certain he had misheard. "What?" "I know it is usually the man who asks, but I am done with convention. I am done with being afraid." Sarah's eyes were fierce and bright. "I love you. Lucy loves you. You have proven yourself 100 times over, so I am asking, will you marry me and be a father to my daughter and help me build a life on this land we have both fought for?" Warren started to laugh, joy bubbling up from deep in his chest. "Yes, absolutely yes." He picked Sarah up and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. "But I want to do this properly too." He set her down and dropped to one knee, taking her hand. "Sarah Peterson, you are the bravest, strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever known. You have taught me that love is not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "I already said yes," Sarah pointed out, but her eyes were shining with tears. "Say it again." "Yes, Warren. Yes to everything." They married on a crisp November morning in Sweetwater's small church, with Lucy dressed in a christening gown that had been Clara's. The whole town turned out for the wedding, these frontier people who had watched Warren and Sarah build their partnership and approved of its transformation into marriage. Warren wore a new suit purchased with money from their first successful harvest, his dark hair neatly trimmed, his face clean-shaven for the occasion. Sarah wore a simple dress of cream-colored muslin with a spray of autumn wildflowers in her blonde hair. She was, Warren thought, the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the union, Lucy let out a happy shriek, and everyone laughed. It seemed even the baby approved. Warren slipped a gold band on Sarah's finger, a match to the one she would place on his. I promise to love you and defend you and build a life with you that neither of us has to face alone. I promise to be your partner in all things, Sarah said. To face the frontier and whatever challenges come with you by my side. Their kiss as husband and wife was met with cheers and applause. The wedding celebration lasted well into the evening, with food and music and dancing. Warren held Sarah in his arms as they swayed to fiddle music, aware that every person in that room represented community and connection, the very things he had run from for so long. No regrets? Sarah asked, looking up at him. Not a single one, Warren kissed her forehead. You have given me everything I did not know I needed. We gave each other everything, Sarah corrected. They rode back to the homestead under a canopy of stars, Lucy sleeping peacefully between them in the wagon. When they arrived, Warren carried both his girls across the threshold, first Lucy to her cradle, then Sarah to the bed they would now share. Welcome home, Mrs. Gallagher, Warren whispered against Sarah's lips. I have been home since the moment you found Lucy on that trail, Sarah replied. I just did not know it yet. They made love for the first time as husband and wife, gentle and passionate and full of the joy of finally belonging to each other completely. In the months and years that followed, the Gallagher homestead became one of the most prosperous in the territory. Warren proved to have a gift for ranching, building their herd with careful breeding and smart management. Sarah's garden expanded to include medicinal herbs that she sold to the doctor in town, and her reputation as a healer grew. Lucy grew into a bright, fearless little girl who called Warren Papa and followed him everywhere, learning to ride almost before she could walk properly. 3 years after Warren and Sarah married, they welcomed a son, whom they named Thomas after Sarah's first husband, a gesture of respect for the man who had brought her west. 2 years after that came twin daughters Mary and Grace, who completed their family. The homestead expanded as well. Warren built a proper house with 4 bedrooms and a wraparound porch where Sarah liked to sit in the evenings while the children played in the yard. They added more land, more cattle, and employed several ranch hands during busy seasons. But Warren never forgot the lessons he had learned. He made a point of helping new settlers, remembering what it felt like to be alone and struggling. The Gallagher homestead became known as a place where travelers could find a hot meal and assistance, no questions asked. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Warren and Sarah stood on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. Lucy, now 13, was in the barn helping with the horses. Thomas chased the twins around the yard, all 3 shrieking with laughter. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had ridden past that baby on the trail? Sarah asked, leaning into Warren's side. Warren wrapped his arm around his wife, pulling her close. Every day I thank God I stopped. You and Lucy, you saved me, Sarah. I was dead inside, just going through the motions of living. You taught me how to truly be alive. We saved each other, Sarah said, echoing the words that had become their shared truth. Warren looked out at the land they had built together, at the children who were their legacy, at the woman who had shown him that love was not a weakness but the very foundation of strength. He had spent 5 years believing that isolation was safety, that caring for people would only bring pain. But Sarah had proven him wrong about everything. She had shown him that the frontier was not just a harsh, lonely place but also a canvas on which to paint dreams. That family was not a liability but the very reason to fight and build and hope. I love you, Warren said, the words as natural now as breathing, spoken every day and meaning more each time. I love you too, Sarah replied. My lonely cowboy who stumbled across a baby and found his way home. Inside the house, their children called for them, and hand in hand, Sarah and Warren Gallagher walked into their home, into the life they had built from courage and hope and love that had tamed the wild frontier and proven that even in the harshest land, 2 hearts could find their way to each other and flourish. The sunset faded to twilight, and lights glowed warm in the windows of the Gallagher homestead, a beacon of family and belonging in the vast Montana territory, proof that sometimes the greatest adventures begin not with riding toward the horizon, but with stopping to help a stranger and opening your heart to the possibility of love.